Today I'm going to show you a full disassembly of this brand new knife, Benchmade OM. So the first thing I did, I removed the pocket clip because I wanted that side of the knife flat on the table. And then I loosened up all the 5 screws that hold the frame together. What is very interesting, Benchmade departed from using T6 hardware for this knife, and instead they used T5 screws. A fact that is of interest to a Benchmade collector. I think that's the first time they did it. I was happy to find out that there was not excessive amount of Loctite on these screws, so the disassembly process went on without any adventures. Once the screws were removed, the cover popped very easily. The main spring, or springs in this case, were located on top of the mechanism as you open it. The gates that hold the blade in a deployed or in a closed position, they did not tend to just jump out like they do sometimes on the larger knives. Everything is fitted very tightly and snugly inside this knife. As you can see, I can easily manipulate the assembly without parts falling out. Okay, you can push on one of the ends of the action spring to remove it, and then pop out the action button. It has a little spring to prevent it from rattling, so be careful not to lose it. I recommend putting a dab of grease into the hole where the spring sits. This way it'll stay securely in place. Next step, you just simply lift up the sliding plate and it comes right out. Leave the blade in a forward position. Push it all the way forward and then just slightly lift the back of it and it comes right out. It has a cylindrical looking part. It's actually a slight cone to it, but that part sits right in the blade, and if you turn the blade on the other side, it just folds right out. If you disassemble this knife for cleaning, most likely that's where all the dirt and debris will end up, right around the area that I cleaned here, just by the nature of how the knife operates. The knife was pretty well oiled from the factory. I tried running it dry, but unfortunately the fit is so tight that oil will be required. I did not remove the gates that retain the blade in the open and closed position. If you decide to remove them, be very mindful of the small springs that operate those gates. If you lose those springs, your knife will cease to operate, and your life as you know it will be over. To reassemble, first insert the blade, making sure that the edge is pointing away from the front gate. And then reinsert the cylindrical or conical boss. Leave the blade in a forwardmost position. Drop the slider blade back in, and you're ready to reinstall the action spring assembly. One end of it hooks onto that round boss and the other into the slot on the back of the slider plate. I like how it's retained in place under its own tension. Careful not to lose the spring when reinstalling the action button. It has a rail that fits on a horizontal slot on the frame, and then you have to pull back on the action plate and make sure right here that it pops into the tiny little slot on the underside of that action button. If the action button installed correctly, it will stay in a position allowing you to just simply drop the top plate on it without any additional adjustments. I applied blue Loctite to all the T5 screws, and I pre-position all the screws before I start tightening. And I tighten in a alternating pattern. So you see me tighten the front left, then the very back, there's one in the back, then come back to the right front and tighten it, and then go across to the middle left, and then from there to the middle right. Be very careful not to over torque these T5 screws. They're tiny, they could be easily stripped, and you're going to need to be able to unscrew them next time you clean out this knife, which I predict will be a regular occurrence based on how sensitive this knife is to dirt. I'll allow myself this comment. Whoever designed this knife is a solid mechanical engineer, but I don't think this person is a weapons designer. The weapon just needs a little more clearances to account for that kind of dirt, especially if you plan to put this device in a pocket. And here's the final action check. The knife is working now. I'm satisfied. If anything, the button became a little bit easier to actuate than it was before. So oiling the knife and keeping it clean is going to be the key. I hope this video has been helpful to you, so don't forget to like and subscribe.